The air hangs thick with dread, a silent scream echoing across the ravaged fields of Kursk. Whispers, initially dismissed as fantastical, now coalesce into a terrifying truth. North Korean soldiers, not on some distant border, but here, in the heart of Russia, have committed an act so bizarre, so utterly unexpected, that it defies all logic. Reports are fragmented, details shrouded in a fog of disbelief. But one grim fact remains. These men, caught in a maelstrom of unknown motives, have taken their own lives. Imagine the chilling realization, the sheer impossibility of the scenario that has unfolded in this once peaceful region. How could this have happened? What forces are at play? Even the usually impenetrable facade of Kim Jong-Un has cracked under the weight of this bewildering incident. This isn't just a military blunder. It's a dark, gaping hole in the fabric of reality. Prepare yourself, because the story you're about to hear is not for the faint of heart. Today we delve into the impossible and the unbelievable, into the grim theater of Kursk. But before we delve deeper into the disturbing truth, know that the final conclusion will be at the end. Please watch to the end. Chapter 1: The Unthinkable Deployment. The initial reports were garbled, barely comprehensible. Sources within the Russian military, usually tight-lipped, spoke of unusual troop movements, of units arriving without fanfare, their presence almost an anomaly in the familiar landscape of the Kursk region. These were not Russian soldiers, not the usual conscripts, nor hardened veterans. They were North Koreans, and their arrival was far from a friendly exchange. There had been no formal announcements, no joint exercises scheduled, no reason for their presence in the area. They appeared as a spectral force, materializing out of thin air, their every move shrouded in secrecy. They were equipped with a mix of older Soviet-era weaponry, alongside newer North Korean modifications. We're talking about AK-74 variants modified by North Korean engineers, along with BTR series armored personnel carriers, which had been retrofitted with locally designed defensive systems. Their uniforms, bearing the distinct insignia of the Korean People's Army, made them instantly recognizable, yet entirely out of place. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They were an elite detachment, their eyes holding a peculiar intensity, a mixture of discipline and something that bordered on fanaticism. Speculation, rife among military analysts, focused on a potential covert agreement between Russia and North Korea, a clandestine deal that put North Korean forces on Russian soil for a yet unknown purpose. The situation was an enigma, a puzzle box that refused to yield its secrets. Why Kursk? Why now? These are the questions that echoed through intelligence circles, creating a sense of unease that would soon escalate into full-blown horror. The initial unease, a quiet tremor, soon turned into a full-blown earthquake. It was an unspoken truth that something was terribly wrong. The deployment itself defied all logical explanation, setting the stage for the catastrophe that would follow. Whispers of a special mission leaked from the Kremlin's inner circle, but the details remained heavily classified. Chapter 2: The Kursk Garrison. The North Korean contingent was stationed near a small, obscure garrison outside of Kursk, a locale once known for its quiet existence. The Russian personnel, initially curious about their unexpected comrades, soon became wary. The North Koreans were isolated, maintaining minimal interaction with their Russian counterparts, a stark contrast to the usual military courtesies. Their discipline was unnerving. Drills were conducted with a precision that bordered on robotic, their faces betraying no emotion. They moved as one entity, their communication terse and deliberate, their actions seemingly driven by a higher, unknown command. The garrison's usual daily routine was disrupted, replaced by an atmosphere of constant vigilance. The Russian soldiers, veterans of multiple conflicts, found themselves unnerved by the silent intensity of their North Korean guests. The weapons they carried were not just tools, they were extensions of themselves. The North Koreans carried their rifles with an almost religious fervor, maintaining them meticulously, as if they were sacred objects. They were seen practicing unorthodox martial arts techniques, movements that seemed more like a dance of death. Their combat training was not just rigorous, it was brutal. pushing them to the limits of human endurance. These were not just soldiers, they were warriors, honed to a razor's edge. The situation became more tense as days progressed, with more strange events occurring. The North Koreans stopped using radio communication completely, switching over to encrypted signals and couriers. This complete silence, combined with their highly regimented behavior, made the Russian soldiers feel like they were sharing their space with a silent, ticking time bomb. Something was clearly coming, and whatever it was, it would be like nothing they had witnessed. The uncertainty gnawed at their nerves, transforming what had started as curiosity into a chilling fear. Chapter 3: The Darkening Hour. The first signs of the impending tragedy were subtle, almost imperceptible. A heightened sense of anxiety began to permeate through the North Korean ranks, though still masked by their characteristic stoicism. There were strange rituals observed at night, under the cold gaze of the moon, where they seemed to engage in some form of silent, almost spiritual preparation. One account describes the soldiers engaging in some sort of rhythmic chanting, a low drone that seemed to vibrate through the very air around them. They seemed to be preparing, not for a battle, but for a different kind of event, one that was more personal and deeply unsettling. The once precise military drills became even more rigorous, with the soldiers pushing themselves to their physical and mental limits. They were no longer merely training, they were undergoing some sort of bizarre transformation. Reports from the Russian military detail the disappearance of some North Koreans from their barracks. At first it was attributed to possible desertion, but no one could track them. No movement outside the perimeter was seen. This only amplified the feeling that something dark was about to unfold. This was further heightened by the fact that the North Koreans had completely sealed their quarters with metal bars on doors and windows. They were like a cage within a cage. On the eve of the incident, the air was thick with an unnerving stillness, a preternatural calm that hinted at the coming storm. The Russian soldiers, stationed outside the compound, reported seeing flickering lights from the North Korean barracks, accompanied by the faint sounds of weeping and chanting. It was as if a veil of darkness had descended upon the garrison. The stage was now set for the grim, terrible climax of this unfolding drama. It was clear something was very wrong. Chapter 4: The Cataclysm. The events of that fateful night will forever be etched in the annals of military history. In a coordinated act of sheer despair, the North Korean soldiers, in their barracks, resorted to extreme measures. Witnesses' accounts from the Russian soldiers describe sounds of gunfire echoing throughout the compound, followed by a long, eerie silence, the silence of death. The North Korean soldiers used their own weapons, modified AK-74s and grenades. They meticulously secured their quarters, making it virtually impossible for anyone to intervene. The silence that followed was even more disturbing, like a blanket of dread thrown over the entire site. When the Russian forces finally managed to breach the barracks, what they found was horrific, carnage that defied all comprehension. The scene was akin to a battlefield within a contained space, the ground covered in spent casings and pools of blood. It was a scene of absolute and final despair. Each soldier had inflicted a fatal wound upon himself, their faces frozen in a mask of pain and terror. What would cause this? There was no note, no explanation. This was not the act of a desperate and fleeing army. It was a pre-planned, synchronized massacre. The psychological impact on the Russian troops was devastating. The sheer horror of the scene, combined with the inexplicable nature of the event, left them in a state of shock. The site was immediately placed under lockdown, with access limited to a select few specialists. The questions remained. Why? What prompted such a gruesome act? What dark forces were at play? This was not just a tragedy, it was a nightmare unfolding in real time. A chilling reminder of the unfathomable depths of human despair. Chapter 5: The Aftermath and Unforeseen Revelation. The initial reports attempted to attribute the mass suicide to a psychological break, a sudden, collective madness. But experts, delving deeper into the evidence, soon realized that such an explanation was inadequate. The sheer coordination of the act, the methodical nature of it all, pointed towards a deeper, far more sinister purpose. A closer inspection of the barracks revealed strange symbols scrawled on the walls, a language that was neither Russian nor Korean. Linguists and historians were brought in, tasked with decoding these cryptic messages, which seemed to hold the key to unlocking the mystery. Initial findings pointed towards some kind of ancient cult, a dark secret hidden within the North Korean military machine. Experts theorized they were not just soldiers, but members of a fanatical sect whose beliefs had led them to this horrific end. Further examination of the soldiers' personal effects revealed a number of strange religious texts and trinkets, reinforcing the notion that they were driven by some form of extreme ideology. As the investigation progressed, a far more unsettling truth began to emerge. It was revealed that these soldiers were part of a covert program of genetic manipulation, a top-secret project aimed at creating a new breed of super soldiers with enhanced strength, endurance, and loyalty. But the program had a terrible side effect, and when the new super soldiers realized they were just lab rats, they chose the only way to get out of this hell. The Kursk incident was not just an act of mass suicide. It was a desperate attempt to prevent their own biological weapons program from being discovered. This unexpected twist revealed not just a tragedy, but an international conspiracy, with implications that reached far beyond the borders of Russia and North Korea. The truth was far more terrifying than the initial report suggested. Chapter 6: Global Implications and the Unfolding Conspiracy. The revelation of the genetic manipulation program sent shockwaves throughout the global intelligence community. The incident at Kursk was no longer an isolated tragedy, but a chilling indication of the lengths to which certain regimes were prepared to go in their pursuit of military superiority. The implications for global stability were profound, as this development raised concerns about the use of biological weapons. The governments of the world, now alert to the reality of this genetic program, began scrambling to assess their vulnerabilities. Secret meetings were held, intelligence operations were ramped up, and a new era of paranoia descended. The United States and other major global powers launched their own parallel investigations, attempting to uncover the extent of the program and its potential impact on the global balance of power. There were concerns that North Korea might have developed similar programs, and that other rogue nations might attempt to replicate it, leading to a dangerous arms race unlike anything ever seen. The silence from Pyongyang only amplified the sense of foreboding, with many fearing that the Kursk incident was merely the tip of a massive, hidden iceberg. The incident at Kursk was no longer just a question of military might. It was a question of ethics, morality, and the future of humanity itself. As the dust began to settle, one thing became abundantly clear. The world had entered a new age, a dark age of advanced technology and genetic manipulation, where the line between science fiction and reality had blurred. The truth was much more complex and unsettling than anyone had initially thought. The consequences of this revelation are just beginning to unfold, and are sure to shape international relations in a profoundly different way. Chapter 7: The Unexpected Twist. The truth, as it often does, took another unexpected turn, revealing an even darker layer to the already complex scenario. Deep within the bowels of the Russian Ministry of Defense, it was discovered that the entire North Korean program was not solely their creation. It was revealed that the Russian Federation had quietly been supplying North Korea with advanced genetic engineering technology for a number of years, in exchange for other favors. This clandestine agreement had been kept under wraps, known only to a select few individuals within the upper echelons of both governments. The North Korean super soldier program, then, was not simply a rogue endeavor, but a joint venture, born out of a desperate need for technological parity in a world dominated by the major powers. The Kursk garrison had been a testing ground, a secret laboratory where the Russians could observe the outcome of their collaboration, an area they thought was completely off the grid. The mass suicide was then no longer just an isolated incident, but a catastrophic failure of this joint program. The entire event was an attempt to cover up this partnership, a desperate measure by the Russian and North Korean governments to conceal their illegal activities. This revelation caused an international scandal, as both the Russian and North Korean governments found themselves caught in a web of deception. Trust in international institutions, in diplomacy, in the very fabric of global order, crumbled. The shocking truth was that the Kursk incident was not just a tale of horror and despair. It was the result of a dangerous secret agenda that had devastating consequences for everyone involved. The whole event was much deeper and sinister than anyone had imagined. Chapter 8. The Final Revelation. The truth, as it sometimes does, has one final twist. The investigation into the Kursk tragedy went even deeper. Documents were found showing that the Russian government secretly created these super soldiers not as allies, but as a test bed for their own super soldier program, using the North Koreans as an experiment. The Russian military didn't want to take risks with its own people, so they used the North Koreans instead. As it turns out, the technology itself was not Russian to begin with. The genetics research and DNA manipulation came from a secret underground organization that operated worldwide and sold its tech to the highest bidders, no matter what countries they might represent. In one of the documents that was discovered, it was stated that one of the higher-up Russian generals found out about the North Koreans and ordered their deployment into Kursk as a method of cover-up and to destroy all data that might link back to Russia. That information was passed on to the super soldier squad from North Korea, who then took matters into their own hands, knowing they could never go home, never have normal lives. What had appeared to be an act of despair was in actuality a final show of defiance. They did not kill themselves out of despair. They did it to stop the spread of this technology and expose all the participants who were involved. Their act became their final and most significant act of resistance. The soldiers of Kursk, through their tragic end, had managed to deliver a final warning to the rest of the world. There are powers at play in the shadows, and if unchecked, they may lead to the end of humanity. Chapter 9. Conclusion and the Call to Action. The events in Kursk stand as a grim testament to the dark potential that lies within the human spirit. The story of these North Korean soldiers is not just a tale of tragedy, but a cautionary note about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the misuse of science. The pursuit of military superiority should never come at the cost of our humanity, and the events that transpired in Kursk provide a stark reminder of this fact. The manipulation of human beings for political and military gain is a path that leads to unimaginable horrors, and we must do everything in our power to prevent it from happening again. As we reflect on the events that unfolded in Kursk, it is imperative that we remember the lessons that we learned. The world cannot stand idly by while such atrocities are committed. We must be ever vigilant, ever questioning, and always ready to stand up for what is right. The responsibility of ensuring a better future rests on our shoulders. As individuals, we need to educate ourselves about the dangers that threaten our world and be prepared to take action when necessary. The silence of complacency is the same silence that allows evil to thrive. Together, we can strive for a world where science is used for the betterment of humankind and not as a weapon of destruction. We cannot let the sacrifices of the soldiers of Kursk be in vain. Their deaths serve as a stark reminder, a dark warning, and a call to action. They may be gone, but their story must continue to be told, their lesson remembered. Watch out for the shadows, because they are always watching us. Remember, the full conclusion was at the end. Thank you for staying until the end. Please like and subscribe for more content.